There's a clear change of tone at conference. You know, the doom and gloom is sort of giving away to a bit more of the future. I mean, how happy and optimistic are you feeling now?
I've never been more optimistic about our country's future. And the last few years, instability and chaos has held back our country, but now we are returning stability to our public finances and we're making the pro-business, the pro-growth reforms. Well, I had a choice to make when I learnt of the inheritance and the £22 billion black hole in the public finances. I could have either continued with the Conservative approach of covering that up, or I could have been honest and transparent with people.
Oh, I love the party. I love its traditions. I love its history. These were the words Rachel Reeves choked out through tears when confronted about being our red Tory. But behind those tears lies a £22 billion black hole in Britain's finances that her leadership has yet to address. The emotional breakdown we're about to analyse isn't just about a politician having a human moment. It represents the perfect metaphor for Labour's identity crisis, crying about tradition while walking a path that many long-time supporters no longer recognise. Is this the face of a party that's lost its way? Or are Reeves's tears evidence of the impossible position today's Labour finds itself in? Everybody has witnessed politicians cry before. In contemporary politics, the well-timed tear, the trembling lip, and the emotional appeal intended to humanise people we frequently perceive as cold and calculating have practically become the rites of passage.
It was a difficult decision that I had to make yesterday. It's not the decision that I wanted to make. It's not a decision that I expected to make. And there was a £22 billion black hole between what the previous government had said they were going to spend and what they were actually spending. And what happened when that previous government made a commitments it could not afford, it put pensions in peril, and it sent mortgage rates and rents through the roof.
However, the current events involving Rachel Reeves were quite different. This was the unvarnished exposure of a person whose identity had been questioned, not the rehearsed vulnerability of an experienced politician. Reeves didn't simply object to the description when she was called Red Tory during what ought to have been a standard interview. She sobbed. Being accused of effectively wearing a red rosette while harbouring blue policies struck to the very core of her self-perception after 25 years of being a Labour member. The charge called into question not only her policies, but also her sense of inclusion in the party, to which she has devoted her adult life. Her voice cracked with emotion as she said, "I've been a member of the Labour Party for 25 years," while crying. "I've been delivering leaflets since I was 16 years old." Observe this. Reeves is not defending her ideas or outlining how her economic philosophy is consistent with Labour ideals. Rather, she is narrating her own experience with the party, as though her longevity should be enough to protect her from accusations of ideological drift. This emotional defence highlights a significant aspect of Labour's current situation.
The scale of the challenge and how the path ahead is harder and steeper than we could have envisaged on the 4th of July. I thought it was right to be open and honest, but also set out a path to bring stability back to the public finances. I know we can bring that investment back to Britain to grow our economy, to improve living standards and bring good jobs, paying decent wages right across our country.
Okay, so let's look at your growth strategy. I mean, what is your plan?
We need to boost investment, both public and private. The Treasury that I now run needs to take into account the benefits, not just the costs of investment, and we need to leverage in that private sector investment.
Rather than adhering to fundamental values, Reeves and the party leadership seem to think that years of membership are a better indicator of party devotion. Saying, "I've been coming to this restaurant for 25 years," is the political equivalent of suggesting that you are ordering from a menu that is entirely different from what made the establishment renowned. The charge of being a red Tory did not appear out of thin air. The reason for this is the increasing belief that Reeves, in his capacity as Chancellor, is pursuing economic policies that are quite similar to Conservative strategies of budgetary discipline and business-friendly policies. The impression that Labour is now the party of business was not dispelled by her infamous statement. The working-class unity that served as the cornerstone of Labour seems very different from the economic agenda she is supporting. Who Reeves appears to be most offended by being challenged by is really telling. She broke down when she talked about younger party members doubting her Labour credentials, but she doesn't seem to care about the worries of ardent Labour supporters who feel left behind by the party's turn to the right. The feeling of betrayal doesn't seem to deserve the same emotional response for the working class populations in old red wall areas who have seen their quality of living stagnate, their manufacturing jobs go, and their public services erode.
So what are those measures going to yield? I mean, you must have done the modelling. You know, how much is reforming planning going to add to growth?
Look, the Office of Budget Responsibility will be the arbiter of the growth impact. We'll set out more detail of that in the budget and the spending review, but already we have called in planning decisions around onshore wind, housing and data centres to unlock the private sector investment
So how
in
much
sectors
growth
like...
will the National Wealth Fund deliver?
Look, you add it all up and we'll set out in the Office of Budget Responsibility the impact of these changes.
Reeves's passionate defence of her party devotion and her calm evasiveness when questioned about previous problems stand in stark contrast. We saw the cool deflection of a seasoned politician when she was asked about embellishments on her resume about her tenure at the Bank of England. There were no tears or emotional defences. This selective emotional transparency implies that the tears are about more than just being offended. They are about identifying which comments are uncomfortably close to unpleasant realities. Political tears frequently serve as effective deflectors. Emotion is a handy escape route when straightforward responses to substantial criticisms become too challenging. Reeves successfully steered the discussion away from the awkward topic of whether Labour has abandoned its historical mission by focusing on her sense of belonging rather than the content of the policy. What we're seeing is the outward expression of Labour's severe identity issue, not just a single politician's emotional outburst. The party is caught between the desire of its current leadership to take the middle ground with business-friendly policies and its historical roots as the political voice of the working class.
Our rules are already different from the ones we inherited from the Conservatives. So our two rules is that we will balance day-to-day spending with tax receipts, and we will bring debt down as a share of our economy.
Now, are you looking at whether you can change that to increase public investment, as many people want?
Well, our rules do treat capital investment and day-to-day spending separately. We'll balance day-to-day spending with receipts, and the problem is that made it harder to achieve growth, which is why that prize of growth has eluded us for so long. I'm not going to make those same mistakes. We will make sure that we keep that space for investment in infrastructure.
Reeves embodies this paradox by adopting an economic strategy that many traditional Labour supporters find unfamiliar while being emotionally invested in the party's traditions. What we have seen in Rachel Reeves is not merely a brief lapse in political poise. Rather, it is the outward expression of Labour's identity crisis. In addition to being a sign of poor economic planning, the £22 billion black hole critics have uncovered in the UK's finances also represents the stark contrast between Labour's strong ties to its history and the Conservative policies it currently supports. The core of contemporary Labour lies in this contradiction, a leadership that both mourns for and destroys its traditions. Voters' real concern is not whether Reeves's tears were sincere, but rather if her economic strategy upholds or violates the principles she says she believes in. Her policies, which detractors claim are more in line with Conservative ideals than Labour's past pledges, point to a party that has compromised its working class roots in order to be more electable. The emotional spectacle does little to console the disillusioned Labour voter who is witnessing this. The question is whether the party's behaviour, not its feelings, reflects the customs that formerly characterised it. The tears might have been shed not only for her questioned sense of belonging, but also for the realisation that you cannot claim Labour's past and its core economic values at the same time.